Well, I'm Bart Rademacher, and this is Transformational Art at Burning Man. And this is a particularly exciting day for me today because I'm talking to an artist that's really right there at the Playa, almost at the Playa, at Bruno. And so what's particularly cool about this today is, all of us, we want that place of, enlightenment, if you will. And some people call that place of being high. But there's so many ways you can get there. But my preferred way, and I think this artist's preferred way, is how is it that we can tap into our own genius, our own neurology, if you will, so that we can naturally get to that own high. Because here's what's cool. When we manifest that ourselves, when we make that connection in our neurology and expand our senses in all aspects, that's a really cool place to be. And so the creation, the genius, the creative genius of Benjamin Langholz from California, from Tokyo, from Japan, from Germany, wherever he's coming from, and his entire crew from all over the world are creating an incredible piece. And if you have the courage to step into that, what he calls that alternate reality, then you've got this opportunity to, on your own devices, get that high that you can get back to again and again without any kind of support. But here again, this is the beauty and the magic of what we get to experience at Burning Man. In the Playa is all these amazing people like Benjamin bringing their amazing talents, their ideas, the fascination of what's possible in life so that we get to experience it. So Benjamin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Super nice.
So tell us a little bit about your creation, and what's really cool today is we're actually going to show some pictures, if I got the right connections here. But tell us a little bit about your creation, and we'll look at some of the pictures that we have available.
Yeah, for sure. It's called Stone 27, and it's a pathway of floating stones that take you up from the playa floor up 20 feet in the air and then back down the other side for this little journey. And I just got back from South Africa where I did Stone 7 there as well. And that was like a more linear, simple version and a good test for Burning Man. But yeah, the basic idea is to create these pathways of floating stones where they're not like stairs. They have like wobble in them. And that when you step onto these, like you really get a sense of like where you are in that moment, in terms of like mentally and physically. And you can decide to continue the journey. And I think a lot of people maybe get a few stones into it and decide it's not the right moment for them. But if it is the right moment, by taking that journey, you're going to have to focus in on yourself and come to what I call a moment of complete presence, because it's like there's going to be all this chaos of the playa, but in order to safely make this journey, you really have to go and be focused and be centered in that journey.
So let me see if I understand this correctly, because I'm looking at some of the pictures, and we're going to show them in a moment.
Cool.
But is it basically you have stones, they're suspended, and almost like a staircase? So this is a suspended staircase of stones, and depending on your agility and your courage and perhaps luck, you're going to ascend and have a pretty wild experience.
Yeah, or maybe even stupidity, who knows? But yeah. So they're hung from above. There's 4 steel columns, three of which are these big A's that lean outwards, and one center one, and half a mile of wire rope. I actually lived in Tokyo for 2 years studying kimbaku, which is traditional Japanese rope bondage. So I have a lot of suspension and spatial things in the brain. And I did some previous projects at Burning Man, Africa Burn, and Mid-Burn, all using like regular rope and involving the themes of like human suspension and rope bondage. But now I've sort of moved to this idea of using the same things I learned from that with this, like how to affect people and how people are reached and what makes the mind sort of go into these interesting places. and give that as more of like a journey that people can take and to bring to that same place. Um,
So why don't we do this? I don't know if you can see the pictures right now, but so
okay.
in the order that you gave them to me, so I'm going to show one picture right now, and tell me what we're looking. This is the actual diagram.
Okay, let's see here. I gotta go check them out. It's the model. You mean it's got like the guy standing in front of it, right?
There's no guy in front of it, so it's the very first. Well, let me see. Let me look at what you sent me. Yeah, there's a delay and everything. So anybody listening in, just realize there's a delay in what's happening here. So let me pick up the photograph. So I think it's the first picture that you sent me on Facebook.
Okay, well, the first one I see is of the scaled model. It's got
Correct.
a little guy standing in front, and so yeah, this is the scaled model. This actually helped direct the design quite a lot because we just picked up some. I'm working with an engineer in Berlin. His name is Amikai, and we picked up some stones off the ground outside his house, and he has like a laser cutter, and he was just like, we just have to build the model, like we have to build it out and see how it works. Because I had done a 3D model and talked about it a bit and wrote the concept and the grants and everything, but it really came into more clear focus when we actually had to like build it at scale. So this is actually a 19th scale with for some reason 3D printed Arnold Schwarzenegger in the foreground.
Right.
But yeah, so this helped to figure out the rigging that was needed to do it, like where the anchor points on the ground would be, as well as like all sorts of little problems. Like in my original 3D model, actually, like the rigging was totally wrong. It would have never stayed. The stones would have never stayed in place. But by doing this process, I could sort of play with the rigging, learn a lot about where the points have to be on each stone. The first time I did a suspended stone, it was in Spokane, Washington. My cousin owns some land up there, and that's where the first idea came from. I was actually on the land, and I did a small installation on his land that was sort of more similar to my previous work, where it's like sort of rope bondage related. But it was with wire rope, and it was using some found objects on the land. And then I was just looking around, and you had these big stones and these beautiful trees. And I've never lived in a place where, like, I don't know, I grew up in LA, and so like to live on to be on a piece of land where you can like, you got like, it's only 10 acres, but like that's all yours. You don't have to ask someone for permission to do something. I mean, it's my cousin's, not mine, but
right.
he was really excited about me making things. And so I just saw these stones and I saw these trees, and I was like, like I know this tool that I could use where I could get that stone to hang in between those trees. And it was just kind of a casual thought. And it was actually the day we were leaving. And so Lily and I, who's another partner on all these projects, we left, we drove out, and we drove 2 hours away from his place where he stays. And I was driving and I was just like starting to sweat, like, because I was having all these ideas. I actually had to pull over a few times to like sketch them down. And she's like, what are you doing? I was like, don't worry. Like, I was sweating because I realized that I could use that idea of this hanging stone and actually make something interactive where people could walk along it. And I realized just like instantly that would be quite an intense experience. And the original idea was to have people like rock climb it,
Right.
like they'd be hands and feet. And then I was like, wait, no, that's like way too crazy. Like, we'll stick with like, like stepping stones, sort of like, I always went hiking a lot when I was younger. And so like this idea of, hopping between stones across a river and something like that, but up in the air. And so we actually ended up driving back and spending the next three days. Well, first we went to like a rigging store, just like asked these guys like a ton of questions. And then I just went on YouTube and did a bunch of research on rock climbing bolting. And that's how I figured out how to do the anchor points in the stones, and did an experiment there. And then, that was the evolution of the idea. But this helped a lot to do scale models to like really fine tune where the rigging points needed to be, both on the stones and on the ground and on the columns. Super cool.
That's absolutely brilliant. So let me see if I got the timeline straight. I mean, you first decided you were going to do something, and then you figured out what you were going to do, or was it the other way around? You thought of this suddenly and says, "Okay, I'm going to do this," and now you let the organization know.
Well, I thought of it was actually after Burning Man last year, basically like a month afterwards. And I was thinking to do another installation, but I had no idea what. And then I just had this idea for the floating stone. But after having that idea for the initial, like, I know how I could make that possible, and like that is possible, I like connected this idea of like rock climbing bolting and using specific tools like mechanical tools. I don't use like for Africa Burn, for Burning Man I will, but for Africa Burn and for the first stone, I didn't use any machines to do the lifting of the stones.
Right.
It was all done through mechanical advantage, which I think is nice. It like keeps you really like physically connected to the piece. Like I put all my body energy into these first two pieces. But yeah, so I had that idea, and then as I was driving away, I just like knew exactly what I was going to do for Burning Man. Like I envisioned this ring, and then I was like, first it was going to be like kind of like it was like a flat ring, and then I was like, no, it definitely has to be like tilted up, like a upwards ellipse. And so and then I made the 3D model and wrote the grant, and then finally met Amichai before we got the grant proposal. I met him before we got the grant approved, and we actually started the engineering a few months before the grant approval. I was like, we're doing it, like we've got to go for it. And I was really glad that we did, because we've ended up the whole process being quite far ahead of everything. Like we just finished this. I just finished the steel fabrication here at the generator with JJ and Papa, amazing fabricators who came out from there and helped me out. And so now I'm actually in Gerlach, right outside Black Rock Desert, Black Rock City, and looking for stones, because I have to find my stones.
I think this is so cool. I mean, this is so brilliant. I mean, you're creating it on the fly, and what an amazing interaction, that we can then experience. And so let me ask you this, because I think it's still relevant. You have some people that maybe are making smart choices for themselves. How do you prevent those people from going up that? Because truthfully, I mean, you could get hurt.
Yeah, it's a tricky call. I really believe in like creating a very focused atmosphere,
right?
And also like letting people feel something and feel like self-regulate, I guess, a little bit.
Right.
But my mom is like, so we're putting pads underneath, right? My parents are actually coming to Burning Man for the first time this year to see this piece, which will be fun. And she's like, we're gonna put pads underneath, and I'm like, no, not really. And then I talked with the art support services, because actually at Africa Burn it got shut down the first night. The rangers like taped it off for a moment, and then the art people came and found me in the morning, and we just talked about it. It was fine, but it does make people nervous. Like it's in there it was only like 7 feet high, so
yeah.
But I think it's the sort of thing where if you get on it and it's not your time to do it, you'll really feel it like very quickly. And the first few stones, you won't be high off the ground. And so I guess I just have to like, it's a bit nerve wracking for me, honestly. Like I think for me, I would sleep better if like we had a 24-hour person there, and that person like was going to tell people not to climb it if they didn't seem like it. But who's going to listen to them anyways, if someone's like set on climbing it, they're going to do it, whether or not you have like sort of a guardian. But I think what the piece needs is like, that's part of the interaction, is that when you get on those first few stones, you really feel yourself. And then you also feel like, it was really interesting to watch at Africa Burn actually, where like someone would start climbing and you could see they start getting nervous, but they're like, have a group of friends, and their group of friends are like, come on, you can do it, like no hands, and I'm just like, wow, like that's pretty messed up. Like I wouldn't do that to my friend. Like I'd be like, oh God, like be careful, But I think, people will have to like confront sort of like how they are actually feeling in that moment, as opposed to the world around them, and sort of like maybe that inner drive of like, no, like I have to be able to do it. And honestly, I don't know if I'm going to even go all the way to the top. We'll see if the right moment appears. But I didn't climb the Africa Burn one until like the 4th day of the build. It was like almost done, and then all of a sudden, like I just haven't like, I was just having like Lily was walking over and I was watching it from the sides a lot. And it just wasn't the right moment. Like, and then all of a sudden, I just like walked up and I was like, "Whoa, this is really cool!" It's really nice.
Yeah, I'm looking at the pictures right now, and I mean, it's just truly amazing. I'm showing the picture of the Africa Burn, and
Nice.
it's a beautiful, setting that you have there in the desert, and somebody walking up it. That's pretty remarkable. The other thing that I think of is, sometimes where the fire department comes, to save the cat out of the tree because the cat can't come down again. So what happens if somebody's up top and they can't come down?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe we should stash like a really big ladder or something, or a scissor lift. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe one of those scissor lifts. That might not be such a bad thing. just to be on the safe side.
We
I
can
think it,
disguise it like as a big rock, and it just like sits off to the
yeah,
side.
exactly.
Yeah,
I think it's absolutely brilliant what you're doing, and I love
thanks.
the creativity and the ingenuity of anything, and how actually you've taken upon yourself to learn a whole new kind of way of thinking. Obviously, because obviously you're an outdoors kind of guy, and climbing is probably natural, but still, I mean, to develop something like this totally out of your not so much comfort zone, but your normal world, I think that's absolutely brilliant, and doing it safely and having the artistic flair that you have. What I'm going to do right now is, you want me to show that video?
Yeah, sure.
So let me just show this video. And so, do you want to try to narrate it? Is it with sound or not?
No, no sound. It's the time lapse one, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna do it right now. It's starting right now. So if you want to narrate it, I mean, it's
Yeah. So this was at Africa Burn, and you're gonna see in a moment like this was one night, and you'll see the my friend's Nathan's piece in the background start to burn there, and
right.
I think it's just really cool to see how people go over it and how they interact with it, who spends the most time up there, and yeah, it's just a beautiful sunrise, classic
Yeah.
Africa Burn day. But I don't know. To me, the piece really comes alive when you see people, even if it's like that. Like you just see that they interact with it and how they do so. Like I've never made anything for Burning Man that well, yeah, everything I've made has been interactive, and I think like I almost never feel something by just like looking at the picture on the wall or whatever. But
Right.
like yeah, when you're able to give someone an experience, you really can reach them in a deep way. So
That was always painful for me growing up. My mom was a very cultured lady, and she'd bring us to the museums, and I just didn't really enjoy just looking at things. This I think is just absolutely fascinating, and being part of the experience. I think it's
oh
just
yeah,
such a
yeah.
brilliant concept. Um,
But something I found interesting too, I realized like really heavily in the past 2 weeks because I've been doing the steel columns, right? And we've been putting so much energy into the steel columns. And
uh,
that's one thing I love about Burning Man projects is I feel like they take like all of my capabilities, like completely, and then expand them, of course. So I had no steel fabrication experience whatsoever, but I was like, I'm going to go and help these guys out. Like, I'll just hold the ruler if that's all I got to do. And I did a lot of that. But I also learned a bunch of welding and things. And yeah, we're putting so much energy. And then I sit down one day with one of the fabricators, and he's like kind of stressing about it and like thinking about like all the parts. And it's like, wow, like this isn't even the artwork to me. Like this isn't the artwork. Like the stones aren't the artwork. These are just like ingredients, and the artwork itself is the feeling that someone has when they take that journey. And that's the piece of art. And really, everything else is just like almost like a set, and then like you have the actual play happening on the set or something like that.
well, I definitely need to come see you on the Playa, and
Yeah, definitely.
continue our conversation about it, and talk to the people if they want to be filmed as well,
Yeah,
because
please.
again, this is what's so wonderful about Burning Man, and this is what we don't really get to experience anywhere else, unless it's either fabricated or controlled. This is where there are no limits. There are no limits to what you can experience, and what you can then create, and that's what's so wonderful. So I understand too that you have a whole group of people from all over the world. I mean that's the
Yeah.
fun part, obviously too, but maybe sometimes a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. I've been traveling for like the past 5 years. So I've lived in Tokyo for 2 years, and then I just moved to Berlin. So I like to collect sort of a nice crew, and I never have a place to stay for very long, so I can't invite people to be like, oh, come to Berlin, come stay with me. But I can be like, come to Burning Man, do an installation with me, come to my camp. But yeah, we have people we have someone from Japan, we have from Israel, from Germany, from Mexico, and then a few of us from the States as well. And this one is running quite smoothly, but actually for the last project, Shibari Sanctuary, I did in 2017, most of the crew was from Japan. They'd never been to America, let alone to Burning Man, didn't speak any English. And I don't speak Japanese, so that was really fun. I really enjoy that. But I like getting together a group of people that like, there's no other reason that they would spend such an intense, like I always say like a week at Burning Man is a year in real life. So they like, they spend like a few years together in life experience. And by the end, now we have this amazing, crew and family, and like people are, I think 3 of them right now are in at Nowhere in Spain, and they all met up there, and I think that's super cool. I would be there too if I wasn't doing the fabrication. So
Wow. You
It
know,
creates like a nice world.
yeah, and again, I think that's the magic and the uniqueness of Burning Man is how so many different people come together from some different parts of the world, different cultures, different points of view, and whatever, and we find a way just to work together. And there's nothing more magical and wonderful in this world when all these different peoples can find a way, to collaborate and create beauty in our world. So, I really want to
Sure.
thank you, Benjamin, for this incredible interview and your incredible art and contribution. And one
Thanks.
of the things that's really important for me, and as I do these interviews, part of what the principles of Burning Man, which we all know, is gifting, and so this is actually my gift.
It's
And
amazing.
but what I also recognize is that a lot of us burners, we never really get to experience the story, behind the art, and so this is kind of cool. But part of your journey, obviously, is the need for support and help, ideas, resources, and also funding. And so one of the reasons I do this is just to remind our fellow burners, look, these artists, they're bringing some beautiful things for us to experience. So part of our responsibility is to make sure we get to support you in whatever ways. And so I have two questions for you. Number one, are there any things that we can support you with that you want to let people know so that they can reach out to you? That's my first question. I'll have you answer that, and then I'll give you my second question.
Okay, yeah. Um, yeah, definitely. So yeah, what I tell people, like when you start a Burning Man project, like we were amazingly given an honorarium grant this year, but like we were given significantly less than we requested, and we had to have this like super stressful moment of like, do we still do the project or not? And we like redid all the budgeting, and we're like, oh my god! And so you're already at like a negative budget as soon as you start,
Right.
and and like it's even not even only about the money. It's like it feels so good to have people just like to have a ping in your inbox and you're like, wow, people like actually want this to happen. Like you kind of forget that. Like, I'm zipping around to Home Depot and to now into Gerlach and like everywhere all day. And like I'm like, oh my god, I'm like putting all of my money into this. And then it's just like so nice to have someone just like they can't be there to like lift up the columns with you, but they can just like contribute a little bit and
Right.
it reminds you that there's a community that wants this. So the crowdfunding is super amazing. Our crowdfunding is at GoFundMe/Stone27, and that's with the 27. And then as far as other ways that we would love support, I never bring a camera to Burning Man, and I would love for people to take images, videos, any sort of media of it and send it to me. You can send it to me at blangholz@gmail.com, or maybe you can throw that into a link somewhere. And that would be super amazing because we're hoping to have a videographer or photographer with us, but I'd love to see different people's perspectives of the artwork. And finally, I'm looking for a permanent home for it. My first installations, like my first 4 burn installations, were all burnable, and I love that ephemeral aspect. But this one's stone and steel, and this
Right.
is these are real materials, and I find it's a strong piece. Like the one from Africa Burn ended up in Cape Town, right at the base of Table Mountain, and I'm really happy that it's there standing still. Although it's stressful, like I still feel like each piece of hardware is, stress on each piece and something might fall down. But I love that it can live on and that more people can experience it. More people can experience like what we share in Black Rock Desert. So if anyone knows or has any leads in that direction, also please contact me.
Awesome. Yeah. So shout out to everyone. It's all about the funding. Burning Man is not about any training or money, but beforehand, absolutely, these projects, these installations, they cost a ton of money, and
Oh yeah.
it's just really nice if we can make it even easier for all of the artists to make it even better. And so, in a way, it's our responsibility to support you guys. And so, also, what I'd like you to do is, share our interview, which I think went really well, by the way, with all the photographs
Absolutely.
and the integration. I'm really excited about that part. And just share that, and
Nice.
then again, add the links to your crowdfunding source and anything else that you want. And I for sure will be there with my cameras, and I'll definitely
Awesome.
help you. But I think it's awesome what you're saying is that having different people see it in a different way, capture something different, even at different
Yeah.
times of the day, really make it really worthwhile. And
Yeah.
and that can all be our gift. So Benjamin, I really want to thank you for tonight, and want to give you the last few words.
Yeah, well, thanks, Bart. Thanks for having me on here. I think it's super wonderful that you're reaching out to people. And I'm at the moment, my whole life is around this like Burning Man build, so I love to get into the details and everything with you. So yeah, thanks. It's been really wonderful.
Yeah,
Appreciate it,
awesome.
and I look forward to seeing your whole audience out in the desert. Come say hi. Name's Benjamin. I'm super tall. I'm like super easy to find, 6'10". So just
Right.
say hello.
And we know what you look like, so that's easy too.
Yeah.
So Benjamin,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I'm Bart Rademacher, Transformational Art at Burning Man, and we got a really cool outro by Travis Kossel. And I will be back later tonight, actually. So see you then.
Wonderful. Thank you.